Welcome to Hekman Library's Research Foundations, getting you started doing college-level research like a wise scholar. Today is our intro to evaluating information, and we have to start by asking why. Why do we need to evaluate? The answer here varies depending on your context. Are you evaluating for academic work, like a research assignment for a class, or personal needs, like responding to everyday news? When we evaluate information or sources for academic work, our priority is to ensure that our scholarly research is grounded in reliable and authoritative data. We usually consider sources scholarly and reliable when they're created and vetted by experts in their field, and we often spend most of our time seeking out these kinds of sources for our research papers and projects. On the other hand, when we evaluate information for personal needs, we're trying to solidify our own viewpoints and decisions in everyday life within a world of information that includes news, advertising, social media, and more. We're often interested in figuring out what is best or true, but it can be hard to decide among so many sources. Different contexts call for different kinds of information, but it's not always clear when you look at an article or video what that kind is. Is it objective? Is it opinion? Is it satire? Is it advertising? Is it misleading? That, in a nutshell, is why we take the time to evaluate, to know as much as possible about a source so that we can decide if and how to use it. And here's the tricky part. Since evaluation depends a lot on your context, there isn't necessarily a good source or a bad source. Instead, think about evaluating sources on a scale, or 3 scales actually. First, we have to think about relevance. How relevant is this source? Does it answer the questions I have? Does it offer the kind of information I need? Remember, we have to keep in mind our context to decide how relevant a source is for us. Let's say I'm creating a poster presentation on food allergies in children for my nursing class, and I find these 2 articles. One is from a medical journal reviewing the latest studies on managing food allergies for children, and one is from a popular blog by a mom whose child has a severe nut allergy. They're both relevant in a sense because they're both about my topic. But because I'm creating an academic presentation, I'm going to choose the medical journal article because this is a scholarly study and I can trust that they've collected this data after thorough testing. Besides relevance, we also need to think about expertise. Is this written or published by qualified experts? Is this verified and supported by others with expertise? In our same example, I can look up the authors of this medical study and see that they are a team of doctors and nurses at prestigious institutions. So I judge them to be more experienced and knowledgeable sources than the mom blogger. I also see that this medical journal is peer-reviewed, which means that other experts have verified the study already, giving it even more credibility. Lastly, in our scales of evaluation, we should think about bias. Bias refers to the sometimes hidden agendas or views that might influence how a source presents its information. Social media sources tend to be extra susceptible to bias. While there are many content creators that are interested in using their platforms for educational purposes, many more influencers are sharing information ultimately to entertain, generate engagement, and/or sell a product. When you see clickbait thumbnails with provocative language or captions indicating sponsored content, those are obvious red flags. But sometimes you might have to do a little extra fact-checking to confirm if what they're saying is supported by other trustworthy sources. Information generated by AI tools can also be affected by bias, and not just from the sources it's pulling from. One of the biggest biases that many generative AI models are actually built on is a programming tendency to validate or confirm what the human user states, sometimes called AI sycophancy. This might be nice if you need more affirmation in your life, but for doing research, it makes it difficult to know if AI-generated information is objectively true and error-free, or just conveniently fabricated to perfectly match the expectations of your prompt. So no matter what type of source you are looking at, when evaluating information in any context, just think of these 3 scales: relevance, expertise, and bias. Remember, it's not a question of whether a source is good or bad. Information can be a lot more complex than that, and sometimes what's appropriate for one context won't be for another. Thinking back to our example earlier, the blog post didn't make the cut for my academic presentation, but it could be useful for my everyday life, especially if I'm particularly interested in the author's personal experience as a mom and hoping for some practical tips on caring for children with allergies. Also, as mentioned earlier, plenty of social media channels and AI tools are made with different goals. So ask yourself if these sources are legitimately educational or if you have more scholarly choices, maybe simply tracking down the original studies they're referring to instead of their summary. Taking time to evaluate your sources will help you turn out better academic work and make more informed decisions in your everyday life. Not only now, but later. When we get the chance to present or share what we've learned, we can clearly articulate where this information is coming from, which can help others learn more too. For more insight into evaluating sources and other research practices, check out our other Research Foundation videos or chat with the Hekman librarians anytime.